Janae and Golick Jr., the podcast.
Sad to report that the 2011 Fighting Irish did not pull off the comeback victory in Palo Alto, but we press on. It's Janae and Golick Jr. here on ESPN Radio, the ESPN app, Sirius XM Channel 80, and ESPN Plus. We're presented by Progressive Insurance. Guests join us on the Goodyear Hotline. Mike Golick Jr. and Field Yates, our ESPN NFL insider, and today resident NBA draft analyst, also sitting in with us in studio. And Field, it's been an exciting time. You mentioned we've got Major League Baseball's trade deadline, an absolute feeding frenzy going on right now. We've got the news out of the NBA as we get ready for the NBA draft that the Lakers and Russell Westbrook in talks right now to get him over and a part of that team, a new big three with LeBron, Anthony Davis, and Russ potentially on the horizon. But we've also got the Olympics still going on right now.
Very much so.
What a great last few days for the Americans, whether it was what we saw in swimming with Caleb Dressel and that gold medal for him in the men's freestyle, or what we saw in women's gymnastics. As so much of the conversation had been around Simone Biles, we've got more gold to celebrate for the U.S. And so to help us out with that, Samantha Peshek, 2008 Olympic medalist, national champion in college, joins us now here on the Goodyear Hotline. And Sam, we appreciate you giving us some time as someone that was a part of this program to see Suni Lee now go out and become the fifth straight U.S. woman, American woman, to win an Olympic all-around gold. What did that mean for you, for the USA gymnastics program in the wake of Simone Biles stepping back and stepping out of this Olympics?
Yeah, well, thanks for having me on the show. I'm excited to be here and talk gymnastics and get pumped up about Sunisa Lee. I mean, I watched this morning and I was actually in tears. I was so proud of her. Of course, because Simone Biles is so good. I think that a lot of the gymnasts in the U.S. have kind of been under her shadow in a lot of ways. And so for this to be the Olympic Games, the pinnacle, and for her to do her best and to really receive all that limelight and do her amazing routines, I mean, I could not be more proud of her.
What do you believe the significance is of Suni Lee winning the gold and the individual all around, not just in the context of Simone Biles withdrawing from the competition, but just for the sport of gymnastics?
Well, it's great. I mean, we have won every all-around opportunity since 2004. And so to continue that streak, I think just shows the depth of the United States. Everybody going in knew Simone Biles was obviously capable of winning the Olympic Games, but now that Sunisa Lee, I think it's clear that we had a couple people that could be in contention to win that Olympic gold medal. So excited and obviously very proud of all her work in order to keep that gold medal in the USA family.
Talking to Samantha Peshek with us here, Olympic medalist on the Goodyear Hotline in women's gymnastics. And we know the focus now, the individual all around. We had the team event as well that ended in a silver medal for the United States. But what can you tell us? We spent so much time talking about Simone Biles having to pull out of that event because she needed to get her head in the right place. She talked about some of the things that she had been battling. The twisties got brought up here. What can you say about the rest of that team that came together to go out there and grab silver, which is a remarkable accomplishment?
Right. It's incredible. I mean, for you to step up and to do that level of difficulty in your routines when you weren't even originally slated to compete, I mean, I think that is a tremendous effort by the rest of the team. And people tend to think about gymnastics as being such an individual sport, and I think that was a perfect example of how it's really the epitome of a team sport in a lot of ways, especially in the team finals competition when so much is on the line.
Obviously, we have seen the impact and the reception that Simone Biles has experienced over the past 48 or so hours. And while there have been some detractors and naysayers, there has been some overwhelming support. As you think about what her influence can be, about the mental health conversation, not just in Olympics, but about sports in general. How much of an influence do you think somebody like her could make that will extend way beyond just gymnastics?
Oh, so much. I mean, people look up to her in so many ways. I know a lot of gymnasts that I coach, idolize her from a gymnastics perspective. But then the older you get, I think you realize what she stands for is bigger than gymnastics. And, the Way to Gold documentary that came out with a lot of prominent and high-profile athletes just really talking about and shedding light on the pressures of being an Olympic athlete and a big name in the Olympics, if that. So the fact that, it's unfortunate that she is going through this, but in the bigger picture, I think it's going to end up helping so many other people that might be going through the same thing, or maybe put the right resources and tools in place to maybe prevent that from happening in the future. So I know she's kind of been the face of a lot of advocacy since this past Olympics, and she's worn a lot of that weight on her back in a lot of ways. And so the fact that she's adding this to her plate, I mean, I just wish her all the best. And I hope that she gets the help and the clarity and the happiness and just the peace that she deserves, because knowing what it's like to compete at an Olympic Games, there is just a lot that goes into it.
Well, and Sam, as we're talking to Samantha Peshek with us here, 2008 Olympic medalist at the Beijing Games in women's gymnastics, can you walk us through what the mental preparation looks like for some of these events? Because so much got brought up about the twisties and kind of explaining what that was and the role in Simone's decision-making here.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of times people know Olympics, or people think of gymnastics and they think of the Olympics. And so they only watch maybe once every 4 years, and they see the best in the sport. And rarely do people make mistakes. So sometimes it's hard, I think, for quote unquote normal people or people that do other sports to really understand the gravity of the difficulty that's being done. And especially with someone like Simone Biles, she has a bunch of skills she's doing that she's named because they're so hard that no one's ever done them before. And so if you get lost in the air, or, what I like to say is if your head's not screwed on straight, it can be very dangerous, and you could seriously injure yourself. So something like the twisties, or, just having an off day or not being mentally all there is very dangerous, especially at that high level when she's doing such insane difficulty.
What's interesting is that when the lay person watches gymnastics, I think to myself, the remarkable physical accomplishments that I am witnessing. I can, as we were joking during one of our breaks, can't even do a cartwheel, much less the incredible things that we are seeing during this competition. You're now, as you mentioned, coaching gymnastics as well. If you were to sort of assess a percentage of how much of what you're coaching is physical versus mental, do you think is it 50-50? How would you split those two sectors up?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think most people in the gymnastics world would actually say it's way more mental than physical, which is, I'm sure, funny to hear when you see just how physical of a sport it is. I started actually my own company called Beam Queen Boot Camp, and we do an entire rotation just for the mental training, because that's how important I think it is to start at a young age working on that mental toughness, how to handle the pressure, what to do if you're just not feeling it, how to take a deep breath, and how to build that mental choreography just to strengthen that mind, because gymnastics is way more of a mental sport than a physical sport.
It's remarkable, and I think that message has certainly started to ring loud and clear for a lot more of the people outside of the sport who have come in to watch during the Olympic Games. Samantha, we appreciate so much your time and your insight on this. It's such a huge help. Thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of the games.
Thanks so much.
Awesome stuff. Samantha Peshek, again, 2008 silver medalist in the Team Olympics at the Beijing Games, kind enough to join us on the Goodyear Hotline. Coming up next, we'll veer back to the NBA as we're taking you up an hour about until our NBA draft coverage starts here on ESPN Radio, and they'll have a lot to talk about. Russell Westbrook to the Lakers. What are the tentacles of this? And we do a draft of our favorite drafts ahead of the draft next on ESPN Radio. Gatorade knows there's no one path an athlete takes to unlock their true greatness. For DK Metcalf, greatness starts with an early morning grind, going hard when everyone else wants to quit. For world record-breaking track star Sydney McLaughlin, it's all about setting a goal and working hard every day to shatter it. And for Jason Tatum, greatness starts with giving everything to live up to the legends that came before him. Whatever the path you take to greatness, Gatorade is there to help you fuel it, because greatness starts with G.
Do you own or rent your home? Sure you do. And I bet it can be hard work. You know it's easy? Bundling policies with Geico. Geico makes it easy to bundle your homeowner's or renter's insurance along with your auto policy. It's a good thing, too, because you already have so much to do around your home. Go to geico.com, get a quote, and see how much you could save. It's Geico easy. Visit geico.com today. That's geico.com.
Janae and Golick Jr., the podcast.
always one to admit when someone else says something better than I can, in a better way than I can.
It's rare, but it happens.
Listen, we all gotta find that humility. I draw mine from Field Yates, who joins us here on Chiney and Golick Jr. But the words I am looking for as we sit here getting ready for the NBA draft, we've been waiting to see, man, will Ben Simmons get moved from the Sixers? And sure enough, at that point, we get the news from Adrian Wojnarowski reporting that Russell Westbrook and the Lakers are apparently working on a deal that could bring him out to Los Angeles. John Morant, Grizzly star, sums it up best. He tweets 2 minutes ago, "This is the NBA."
Ja, prescient and well said right there, my friend. And as we know, the night is young. There could be much more mayhem ahead. But yes, well said, succinctly said by John Morant as well.
He's a man of great ability, but also understands that brevity can sometimes be your friend. Now, we mentioned the NBA draft coming up later tonight. Field Yates certainly excited about that, and we talked about his affinity for the NBA draft. And so we realized that this could probably extend to more drafts. He's a guy who covers the NFL draft, likes the NBA draft, and so we needed to put this on wax, and it also is still July, so we're allowed to do this, and our bosses can't get mad at us here. It's time to give our top 4 drafts list. Let's get it going.
A-list with no limits.
It's in the kitchen cooking, good Lord.
As long as it stops at 4.
The heat is on the stove.
444.
For real, though.
With Chiney and Golick Jr.
All right, so we've got our top 4 drafts. Can be any kind of draft here. So Field Yates and I actually, before the show, had a draft for the drafts in this draft.
Yes.
And so Field is going to start us off here with his top 4 list, starting at number 4.
Number 4.
Forgot about the pre-prod there. Number 4 for me is the NBA draft, which takes place in a matter of 1 hour and 45 minutes from right now. I love the NBA draft. That's been something we unveiled earlier on in the show. In the NBA draft normally occurs in late June. So it always was a perfect time for somebody that covers or worked in the NFL to have a little bit of downtime. I love the NBA draft. That's number 4 on mine.
Great spot to decompress there. And again, Cade Cunningham, Evan Mobley, Jalen Suggs, all of them. We can find out where they're going in this year's NBA draft. That's presented by Credit Karma. Coverage begins tonight, 7 p.m. Eastern on most ESPN radio stations and the ESPN app. Number 3, Cliff.
Number 3.
A final draft, because you know what? I enjoy finishing what I started. In a final draft, you get to submit. I can't always promise I'm going to get an A. Probably more likely to get like a B-. I felt like I was kind of a B- student throughout much of my academic career. But a final draft, it's gratification, it's completion. It is coming to the end of many hours or many minutes of hard work.
I always appreciate about the final draft is a lot of times you'd have the title page built in for that.
Yeah.
I came to really be fond of a good title page.
Had to be 7 pages. You get the title page is basically the 7th page. Brilliant. Double space, triple space, 2.2 space.
Oh, yeah. Listen, by any means necessary, you find that little thing. Kids, if you're looking for more tricks, at Mike Golick Jr., hit the DMs. I got you on all the ways to make that paper longer than it actually is. Let's get to number 2.
Number 2.
Draft beer.
Oh.
And you know how much I love beer. Maybe people listening to the show understand I have a huge affinity for really all beers, but craft beers, but draft beer. I prefer my beer cold, in a frosted mug in a perfect world. But in the summer, there are so many great summer beers. You name it, I'll try it. I'll drink it. I'm an equal opportunity beer consumer, but a draft beer really hits different.
He will also endorse it in his Instagram stories here. If you followed Field Yates for any number of time here,
you're missing out if you're not.
This man's got the goods when it comes to. I trust it. I was hoping secretly that this would fall to you in this draft, so I was happy it worked out. But we've got to see now. Number 1 for Field Yates.
Number 1.
Undisputed. Mock drafts. You think about this. We're here, obviously, listening to the radio, but also for those watching us on ESPN+. Hello. Second of all, ESPN+, one of the biggest drivers of content on ESPN+, are mock drafts, whether it's the great Jonathan Gavoni and Mike Schmitz, who cover the basketball draft, NBA draft for us, or Mel Kiper Jr., Todd McShay on the NFL draft, which is really where mock drafts are my favorite, right? Because mock drafts in the NFL, they are a year-round festivity. The day after the 2021 NFL draft, we've got the 2022 NFL draft. Spencer Rattler going number 1 overall, or Sam Howell going number 1 overall. I love mock drafts. And for those, I think they're a silly exercise because no one ever gets all the picks correctly. That's not the point. The point is not how many times you guess the right player to the right team. The point is, are you, generally speaking, assessing which players are likely to go in the first round or in the top of the first round, middle of the first round, end of the first round? I love mock drafts.
It's such a beautiful thing. And you're right, that day after the draft one for the next
Oh,
year
it's different.
that they basically forced Todd McShay to do around here, oh, it is an absolute gem. So there we go. We've got Fields' top 4 drafts. Number 1, mock drafts. Number 2, draft beer. Number 3, a final draft. And number 4, the NBA draft that we've got coming up tonight. Let's see if I can top this here now. Cliff, number 4.
Number 4.
And this really embodies the difference between Field Yates and I here. Number 4, the rough draft for me. Because you know what? It means I started. Now, this might still be just like the night before the papers do, but at the very least, I've fleshed out some thoughts, got some ideas out there, and I'm not beholden to all of the final draft things like proper grammar, spelling, etc.
Yeah, so I do see where you're coming from in the sense that like there's less pressure in a rough draft, right? Because like the final draft, as great as it is to finish, it's also like, all right, I'm sinking or swimming here, right? The rough draft is, well, if I show it to a friend and it like kind of stinks, I can adjust it and I can fine tune it. But I'm still a final draft aficionado.
Yeah, no, like I said, listen, Field, you're very much a final draft person. You're composed. You've always prepared. I'm a little bit more of a rough draft. I am my father's son in that way. Number 3.
Number 3.
And I say this, and the key is the emphasis is on the first 2 words in this because I'm in the middle right now of a Superflex Dynasty draft that Field, I think you and I are actually both in.
It. Yeah.
That's like 20.
Am I on the clock right now?
It might be. It's like 8 hours each pick, but we're doing this remotely here. An in-person fantasy draft.
I'm on the clock in that, by the way.
Oh,
I've
wow.
got an hour and 37 minutes to pick.
No pressure here, Field, is where I think in round 21 right now.
To pick together.
But getting to do this in person, getting to get to a place with a lot of your friends, no matter the sport it is, to make sure that there's some food, there's some drink, there's some kind of fun activity involved here, I always think that's a great place to go.
Completely agree. And in-person fantasy drafts have been hard to execute over the past couple of years because of COVID. And they're frankly hard to, at our age, and you and I are a similar age, and we have a lot of friends who either have kids or have a wife or have a family, and that they can't be traveling, especially in the late summer. There's a lot of weddings going on. But it's very enjoyable to do it in-person fantasy. It's great. I'm actually really bummed I didn't think of this myself.
It's the best part of the fantasy process as the commissioner of my Friends League from college last year, having to collect the fantasy dues from some of these bums. I'm talking to you, Braxton. You still haven't paid.
Wow.
Is the absolute
Step
worst
up.
part of all this. Number 2.
Number 2.
I mean, seriously, I know you've got the money. Just pay up. It's ridiculous.
You play in the NFL, Braxton.
Real quick,
Pay
it's
up.
just it was the I'm talking to you, Braxton, for me.
I mean, it just came up this morning. We were talking about reviving the league again this year. I'm like, I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. It took me weeks, months to hunt you guys down. He still hasn't paid. It's ridiculous. Number 2, the NFL draft.
Number 2.
The NFL draft. Got to do it last year and a couple of years ago with Field Yates on the ESPN digital side here. And
Super
Field,
fun.
in addition to the exercise like you mentioned, it's so much fun to dig in to learn about these guys. For me, it's always going to come back to as someone who lived through that weekend, did not get my name called, but signed as an undrafted free agent. I got to see a lot of my friends change their lives overnight. Like, you see all the work and know all the work that goes into this moment, and it'll never get old watching players walk across the stage and dap up Roger Goodell, seeing the faces on family members, friends around there who have lived that journey with them. Like, that's the purist in me will always come out at the draft seeing that.
You know what term I don't like? Draft bust. And we had this conversation when Kwame Brown was in the news earlier this summer, because here's the reality. As Kwame so accurately stated himself, my mom was living on the golf course by the time I turned 18.
Yep.
They made it. There's no bust. These guys are making it to the top of their profession. Millionaires in a lot of cases. Ages 18 to 22. God bless them.
God bless them indeed. It's a fantastic thing, which brings us to number 1.
Number 1.
This might be the most indicative of, again, my personality versus a lot of other people.
About this one.
The Twitter drafts. Because let me tell you what, as someone who likes this job and wants to keep it, there are some things every once in a while, and God love, if you don't have a friend who is out there to specifically heat check you on Twitter, thank you, Mina Kimes.
She's mine too.
Yes. And she's a great temperature taker of, is this too spicy and should it go live in the drafts? And every once in a while, Field, it's fun to just go walk down the drafts and see what you almost did or almost sent.
Yeah, I had there was like 19 saved a couple days ago, and I was like, ooh, I kept one in there. The other 18 had to go. And some of them, like, in reflecting upon them, I was like, that wasn't even close to funny. And then some of them I was like, man, in the moment, I probably should have pulled the trigger.
Yep. Well, you know what's interesting is what brings you back on some of those, because some of them could get you in trouble with work. Some of them might not be funny, like you mentioned. I always have the great barometer, too, as a person whose mom is on Twitter of, do I want to get a text or call about this potentially later on? So
your parents are both, they're such kind and funny and understanding people, and both great on Twitter. You know what? Don't tell your dad this, but your mom's better at Twitter than your dad.
Yeah. Oh, no, I don't think that's a secret to anyone, including him. So at ND Mom doing the damn thing. There's our top 4 drafts as we head towards the NBA draft tonight. But coming up next, we got to get back to some of Field Yates' favorites as we head towards the next level and see what kind of player Cade Cunningham, the now presumptive number 1 overall pick, is set to be at the next level here on ESPN Radio and ESPN Plus.
Hey, this is Adrian Wojnarowski. Check out my podcast, The Woj Pod, with insight and analysis on the top stories in the NBA.
Adrian Wojnarowski, our insider extraordinaire.
Reaction to breaking news.
This is the latest Woj bomb.
And in-depth conversations with some of the biggest names in the league.
Thanks, Woj. Do it again.
I'm good. Thanks for having me on the podcast.
All right. Yes. Thank you, Woj. Appreciate you having me on.
Listen and subscribe to The Woj Pod wherever you listen to podcasts.
Janae and Golick Jr., the podcast.
Janae and Golick Jr. here on ESPN Radio. Mike Golick Jr., Field Yates, here filling in for Janae Agwimake today. We're presented by Progressive Insurance. And the NBA draft, you guys are going to be able to hear coverage starting 7 p.m. Eastern on most stations right here on ESPN Radio after us. And we know we've got a great group tonight. Field's pumped about this draft. Seen right now on Twitter all of the guys in this NBA draft class on stage in person, which in and of itself is a cool thing to be able to see after so much of what's happened in this last year. And for more on what to expect with this draft class, we're excited to head to the Goodyear Hotline right now to talk to our ESPN college basketball analyst and one of the guys that's going to be helping cover the draft tonight. Seth Greenberg joins us now. What's going on, Seth? How we doing?
What's going on, guys? Wait a second. There are no punters. There are no wide receivers. I mean, Field, what's going on?
Seth, here's the deal. You may not know this, but I have decided that when I grow up, I want to be the next Seth Greenberg, 2-time ACC Coach of the Year, a man who can galvanize a culture, any part of the basketball landscape. And in order to get there, I have to study up on these NBA draft prospects so I can speak fluently on them and not limit myself to left tackles and linebackers and wide receivers.
Yeah, but the getting fired part of it was no fun. I can tell you that much.
Listen, Seth. It's how a lot of us got here. So you've got plenty in common with some of the rest of us here, myself included, multiple times. So Seth Greenberg with us here now, hired and very much in demand to cover this NBA draft class tonight. We've already seen fireworks outside of these players that are getting ready to go into the draft. The conversation around Russell Westbrook, Ben Simmons, but. Seth, as far as some of the players we're going to see, we saw the reports Cade Cunningham likely going to be the number 1 overall pick here. What kind of player is he in the NBA? We saw the great work that he did in college. What can he be at the next level?
He's a poised player that basically he's going to be a focal point of the Detroit organization. He plays at his own pace. He sees over the defense. He changes speeds. He changes directions. He shot 40% from the three-point line. Now, I don't like the comparisons to Luka Doncic because I just don't think that's fair. But he is a guy that you can play through. He's an initiator, and he's very inclusive. The best thing also about him is at the end of games last year, he was absolutely phenomenal. Good decision maker, a little loose with the basketball, shoots 40 from the three, but a very, very interesting prospect, and will be basically the foundation of the future of the Detroit Pistons.
So, Seth, I think we know where the draft starts. It's with Cade, and we have a pretty good feel of how the next couple of picks will look. But in your opinion, if you were to sort of draw a line around the first tier of prospects, the guys who are cut above the rest, how deep is that line, and who are the players in that tier 1?
You know, I think you can go to the 6. I really do. Everyone talks about Cade, and they talk about Jalen Green. They talk about Evan Mobley and Jalen Suggs, who I think in a lot of ways, I think Jalen Suggs might be overall number 1.
Thank you.
But I think that Scotty Barnes is in that conversation. I'm going to go outside the box, and I'm not a Connecticut homer, but I actually think James Bouknight's in that group. James Bouknight's going to translate seamlessly to the NBA. Seamlessly. He can play on the ball. He can play off the ball. He reminds me a little bit of Spencer Dinwiddie. He's got floaters. He's got all different ways to finish around the basket. As good off the ball as any player in this draft. Me personally, I'd have Suggs at the top. I think he's the ultimate leader and winner. I think that he's a guy that walks in your locker room and people are going to follow immediately. And I think Scotty Barnes has a little Scottie Pippen in him. 6'9". I think he's going to be actually a more efficient, eventually, Ben Simmons, because he is going to be able to shoot it. Not as good a passer as Simmons, but the similar defender and a guy to get a rebound and initiate your fast break. I think Scotty Barnes is a can't-miss prospect.
Chenango Gold Jr. here on ESPN Radio talking to ESPN college basketball analyst Seth Greenberg, who's going to be part of the ESPN Radio coverage for the draft tonight. And, Seth, we also know there's some players that are coming here out of the G League, some different routes to the NBA, now present for a lot of these prospects here. How do you think that changes the evaluation process for some of these leagues, some of these teams in the league, I should say, from here on out?
Well, look, the G League night played a limited schedule. The games were on ESPN about noontime or 2 o'clock, but they got a chance to play against, everyone says they're playing against NBA players. They're playing against good players. They're playing against guys that were not good enough for the NBA, because if not, they'd be on NBA rosters. They're guys that had a cup of coffee in the league, but, either were sent down because they weren't ready, or they wanted to get, organizations wanted to get those guys some more minutes. But for sure, they learned the rules. They understood the spacing. They understood the terminology, and those things were all really, really important. And look, Jalen Green is a rocket athlete, an absolute rocket athlete who can make shots. His floor game is good. Doesn't see plays as well as you'd like, but in terms of potential, he's an exciting prospect.
We know the NBA has a very international flair to it. Of course, the MVP of the finals, Giannis Antetokounmpo from Greece, the Greek Freak. Seth, I want to ask you about my guy Alperen Şengün from Turkey. The guy dominated the Turkish league this year at the age of 18. He's kind of old school. What's his future look like in the NBA, though?
Phil, I think he's going to be a good player. First of all, the Turkish league is his third best league in professional basketball.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look, you've got the NBA, you got the ACB in Spain, then you got the TBL. And then maybe the VTB after that, which is the Russian, old Russian league, basically. And I like when you're getting 18 and 9, and you're getting 2.7 assists, and you're a big body. Yeah, he's a little bit old school, but there are other guys that are going to be old school. I mean, Duran Sharp, who played in North Carolina, is going to end up being probably between 20 and 30. He's old school, but he's played with grown men, and I say this all the time. I mean, those guys that have been pros over there overseas, right? From 16 on, they're being held accountable like an adult. There's no enablement. All right, you're at practice. You're going to practice twice a day. If you don't practice hard, there's going to be a consequence. You're going to have grown men around you. They're going to set a standard. And those things help you transition to the NBA in terms of understanding what it's going to be successful. So, interesting prospect, no doubt about it. I think he'll go somewhere between 15 and 20.
Exciting to see where a lot of these guys end up, the future stars getting set, getting ready to go in the NBA draft tonight. You can hear coverage here on ESPN Radio. Seth Greenberg alongside Mark Kessler, PJ Carlissimo, Ramona, and more there. Seth, we appreciate the time. Enjoy the draft tonight, and I'm sure we'll be talking to you soon.
You guys, now that Aaron Rodgers is back, you have nothing to talk about.
Nope, we're lost right now, Seth, to be honest. So thank you for throwing us a lifeline.
We're trying to become 5-tool players over here, Coach. We can't be limited in our skill set. We can't just be a 3-and-D guy. We got to be the ultimate piece of moldable clay that can fit in anywhere.
That's what you guys are. You guys are great. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
That's when we have a great coach like Seth Greenberg, kind enough to come spend some time with us here. All right, coming up next, as some of these players now look into cash on their abilities, going from college, going from some of these lower levels up to the NBA level. We'll get to one prospect in college who has already cashed in big time on abilities we're still waiting to see. Next, here on ESPN Radio and ESPN Plus.
Math says when two great things come together, they make something even greater. For instance, 1 + 1 = 2. Simple, right? How about this? Trunk plus hot dog equals tailgate. Or turf plus dance floor equals end zone. And when you add friends plus football, it equals ESPN Fantasy Football. It's as simple as that. ESPN Fantasy Football with insights provided by IBM Watson. Sign up now at ESPN.com/fantasyfootball.
Janae and Golit Jr., the podcast.
Chenango Gold Jr. here on ESPN Radio. Mike Golick Jr. Awesome having Field Yates, our ESPN NFL insider, in studio. all day today, as well as we got to talk to Tim Kirkjian, our ESPN MLB insider. The trade deadline with some interesting news that we will get to here shortly. Marcus Spears, our ESPN NFL insider, helped us come in and break down all this news reported by Adrian Wojnarowski that apparently the Lakers might just go ahead and do the damn thing, get Russell Westbrook in purple and gold, which...
Welcome home, Russ.
Dear God, yeah, go back out there, be another UCLA Bruin to be able to wear the Lakers colors. And then Sam Pescic, kind enough to join us here, former U.S. Olympic gymnastics medalist, talking us through a lot of what we saw. Again, U.S. women's gold in the individual all-around. A lot of great stuff here. If you missed any of that, make sure you download, subscribe, rate, and review the Chenane Golick Jr. podcast wherever you get your podcast here. But it's time for the end of the day. End of the day is brought to you by Indeed. Hire right now. Visit Indeed.com/credit. Let's keep that same energy. We want to be a jolt of energy.
Yeah, the energy level was really high there.
And now we want to keep that same energy going.
Keeping that same energy.
Keep that same energy.
You could just sense that there was a tremendous amount of energy.
With Chenane and Golick Jr.
And keeping that same energy, let's finish where we started. ESPN NFL analyst Field Yates, big NBA draft fan. We didn't know this coming into today, and so we did all we can do. We leaned into it, and Field has been giving us breakdowns of some of his favorite prospects. Let's finish off the day with Tennessee's Keon Johnson.
Field Yates, NBA Draft Player Profile.
Keon Johnson, guard out of Tennessee, perhaps the most explosive player in this year's draft, has freakish vertical ability, which he flexed during the NBA Combine. He's young. He's going to take some time. He needs to develop. But if you're a team that can afford to bank on the upside, he has a tremendous amount of it. A player who immediately has the ability to play above the rim and could develop into a solid offensive player all around.
Field Yates going deep into the vault. I love it.
Yeah, I'm excited about this player. Yeah, and by the way, shout out Jerry for the great production of all those draft breakdowns today. Had a lot of fun with those. Looking forward to doing those again for next year's NBA draft. But yeah, fun player. I believe Keon Johnson, if the NBA and the NFL were just one league, would hold the combine record for highest vertical, something like 46.5 inches.
Dear
ridiculous
God.
hops.
Ridiculous. Terrifying athletes on display again. That'll be coming up right after us here on ESPN Radio. Keeping that same energy, brought to you by My Computer Career, training for a better life. And how about this? Reported here, sources telling ESPN's Jeff Passan that the Yankees are finalizing a deal to acquire first baseman Anthony Rizzo from the Chicago Cubs here. The Yankees go out and add another bat inside 24 hours here, making no bones about what they plan to do for the rest of this season.
The Yankees had the worst, or darn near the worst, left-handed production of any team in the MLB this year. So in the past 24 hours, they've added both Joey Gallo and also Anthony Rizzo. And the story is about the Yankees, but I got to tell you, shout out Anthony Rizzo for what he did for the Chicago Cubs. Quite literally helped change the trajectory of that franchise. Been there for 10 seasons, helped them win their first World Series in forever. A player who I think many Cubs fans, despite the fact that they have lost 20 of 28 games, wished nothing more than to sign long-term. Unfortunately for him and for them, he is now a New York Yankee, though I'm sure he's looking forward to the opportunity to potentially play some competitive baseball over the next half of the season.
Yeah, I think it's got to be a weird day, a weird kind of changing of the guard. As we know, Chris Bryant was another one that was sat down. Management claimed that this had nothing to do with the trade deadline, but it seems like some of those pivotal pieces from this last era, one that changed a lot there on the way out the door.
And we'll see whether Chris Bryant joins Anthony Rizzo in New York, just with the Mets and Queens as opposed to the Bronx with the Yankees. The NBA, the draft, trades popping up, the MLB trade deadline, football training camps, NHL free agency. It is all upon us, Gojo. It is just an incredible late July Thursday of sports.
It is a great late July of sports here on Thursday. And so, keeping that same energy here, why don't we head to what's going on in college sports right now here. The Alabama Crimson Tide quarterback who made a lot of news, Nick Saban telling everybody at the Texas Athletic Club that his quarterback had already been lined up with close to 7 figures worth of NIL deals. Well, Alex Scarborough, our ESPN staff writer, reported that Bryce Young, who has yet to play a game in his career, has already signed deals using his name, image, and likeness that are worth more than $800,000, according to sources. He's been presented with, but has yet to accept, in excess of $1 million of deal. I know the big one here is Cash App, a commercial he was reportedly already shot with a number of NFL young quarterbacks here. This is the game. I saw David Shaw talking about the Alabama value. Nick Saban knows what he's out here doing, making sure this is always about Cruton.
And I know that Alabama and Ohio State and some of the top programs have always had a leg up in recruiting just because of their football credentials. Well, let's be honest. The playing field, it ain't level anymore. I mean, and not that that matters, right? Like, ultimately, Ohio State and Alabama, I mean, when Nick Saban arrived to Alabama, it's not like Alabama was anywhere close to where it is now. If you build it, they will come. Alabama's built it, and I'm not sure anybody will ever catch up to them until Nick Saban is no longer the head coach. And he signed, a 6-year extension earlier this offseason until he's going to coach until he's 79. So good luck. Compete with Alabama.
Well, I can tell you one group who is going to try. That would be the Notre Dame Fighting Irish offensive line, who are already the proud owner of a couple of sponsorships. I saw Jets Pizza, among others. I saw this courtesy of Rocco Spindler, an offensive lineman there. Shout out to Chubbies, now the official shorts of the Notre Dame offensive line. Who likes short shorts field? The Notre Dame offensive line. Skies out, thighs out, making their Uncle Mike very proud.
Buddy of mine, Kyle, he's actually a Stanford guy, he's one of the co-founders of Chubbies. So I'll have to give him a text and say, nice job bearing your pride. Notre Dame and Stanford putting their two differences aside to come together for a great deal. Skies out, thighs out, indeed.
Showing off a lot of skin and a lot of girth. Love to see the boys. It's always about the bigs capitalizing on name, image, and likeness. Keep that same energy. Is brought to you by My Computer Career, training for a better life. Great stuff from Field Yates today. If you liked his draft coverage, you will love what's coming up next. Stick with it here. The 2021 NBA Draft presented by Credit Karma is next here on ESPN Radio.
Thanks for listening to Janae and Golick Jr. Make sure to subscribe, rate, and review. You can hear the show live weekdays at 4 p.m. Eastern on ESPN Radio, ESPN News, and wherever you stream your audio.
Do you own or rent your home? Sure you do. Fortunately, Geico makes it easy to bundle your home and car insurance. It's a good thing, too, because having a home is hard work. Go to geico.com, get a quote, and see how much you could save. Geico.com. Easy.